Hey writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. I'm Stephanie, your host and the Publisher Operations Specialist at Kobo Writing Life.
I'm Joni, and I work on the KWL business team.
This week we're talking to Joshua Lisec, who's a celebrity ghostwriter and has written many different titles for different celebrities over the years.
But we don't know who.
But
beyond ghostwriting, he also helps authors and writers to set up publishing businesses and imprints, and he knows a little bit about every aspect of the publishing industry.
And he also offers some great tips for people interested in writing their own nonfiction title about maybe themselves or a topic they're really passionate about. In some ways, you can actually prompt yourself to start writing the book and places to start like that.
Yeah, he had great tips about organizing your ideas and your workflow.
So please keep listening. Thank you, Joshua, for joining us on the podcast today.
Hello, Stephanie and Joni. I am thrilled to be here today.
And then just before we begin, can you tell our listeners a bit about you, and then we'll get into your very cool job to us?
Yes. So as you know, my name is Joshua Lisec. I'm a certified professional ghostwriter, a #1 international best-selling ghostwriter, as well as a ghostwriter for Forbes contributors, and on top of that, a TEDx speaker. In addition, kind of aside from the public speaking and the ghostwriting, I'm also a 2-time published author myself, a novelist. In addition to those 2 books, I've ghostwritten over 40 books, and I'm celebrating this year 8 years in business as a ghostwriter for many independent authors in categories from business and entrepreneurship to marketing and management to leadership, self-help, and even great-grandma who wants to write a story, her life story about living through the war.
Perfect. So you really know a little bit about all aspects of publishing.
Yes. From the authors who are selling tens of thousands of copies a month to, the person who just wants to have their story written down and have a legacy book for the grandkids.
Yeah. How did you get into this?
Completely by accident. So back when I was a kid, my great dream was to become a published novelist someday. I think something like 90% of people want to write a book, and I was no different. Before I was legal drinking age in the United States, I, in fact, had a 2-book publishing deal with a publishing house in Washington, D.C. I wrote a couple of novels they picked up. As I was going about promoting my novels and marketing those books, I had a few freelance writing clients on the side, business clients. A couple of them read my novel and they said, Joshua, this is actually pretty good. I picked up your book and I realized it was midnight and I'd read 100 pages. I want to write my own book and I want it to be exciting and compelling like your novels are. Mine's my story. It's not fiction. It's, my experiences in business, how I've gotten to where I am today. Can you help me? And what do you think I said?
Yes. Or maybe no.
The laughter indicates it's actually probably no. And I said no, I'm my own author. I don't write books for other people. Nevertheless, they persisted. They kept saying, is now a good time to help me with my story? Can you help me out now? And I finally said, okay, sure, yes. And I had been saying yes 8 years now and over 40 books later. And it is, I have to say, being a ghostwriter is the most rewarding type of writing I've ever done, because having had not just 1 but 2 of my own books published, I know the feeling of having my literary dreams come true. And I was barely 20 years old at the time, and helping people who are sometimes older, they're more experienced, maybe have 30 or 40 years of industry experience in their business, or even in their profession, maybe health and wellness, or hypnosis, or NLP, for example, and they finally have their book finished. It is a rewarding experience. I kind of feel like a midwife handing the new mother her child for the first time when I send that final draft over to them.
That's fascinating. As an author yourself, is it difficult for you not to insert your own writing or your own voice, into these books?
That's a great question. Interestingly enough, around the time that I was working on my own novels, I had kind of a moonlighting gig as a professional actor, doing theater and stand-up comedy, portraying zany characters in theater and dinner theater and that sort of thing. And that experience of becoming someone else, I think, has really helped me as a professional ghostwriter, because I become my author. I think of ghostwriting really as acting in print. I've met a few ghostwriters over the years where they've mentioned they've really struggled, as a freelancer getting clients, because when they write, it sounds like them. It doesn't sound like their client. And so, yes, it's great, it's professional, it's awesome. There's no typos, but the author can't really keep working with, that freelancer, because people read it and they're like, yeah, dude, this isn't you. We can all tell. But I think I've brought in the art of ghostwriting and acting in print to portray my authors authentically on the page. And going back over 8 years, every single author I've ever worked with, when I send them chapter 1 of the first draft of the manuscript, they get back to me and they say, oh my gosh, Joshua, I can't even tell that I worked with a ghostwriter. It's me. It sounds like me. I shared it with my buddy, and they say, wow, you can write really well. And that's how I know it's a job well done.
We were talking to you before we started the interview, and you were saying that you were in Brazil for a project. So I just want to know a little bit more about, what is the ghostwriting process like when you have a new project, or like, what are the key things you do every time you start a new story?
Yes. So right now I have clients in over 10 countries. Most of them are in the North America, but a few South America, Middle East, Australasia, Europe as well. But regardless of where the author's located, regardless of what their category is, whether it's the memoir or they're a celebrity, a public figure like my client down in Brazil, and they have an audience in the millions, every single author starts the same way. And I can write it, and this is their mindset. Okay, this is the author's mindset I found. I can write about everything, or I can write about nothing. They feel like they're in this strange world where they have everything to say, and yet they don't know where to start their book. And that's why they often enlist the help of a third-party professional ghostwriter like myself. If any of the independent authors are listening, many of you have an accountant or bookkeeper that you worked with the very first time. You remember how you felt when you shared your books with the professional accountant or bookkeeper the first time. You're like, I have all these receipts and I have purchases and this and that, and I don't even know where to start or organize it or budget and taxes, and I don't want to get arrested by the government. You're just kind of all over the place. A lot of times independent authors are when they're first making money as an independent author, and they need the help of an outside professional accountant. With writing a book for independent authors who have so much to say and don't know where to start, it's a very similar experience. So what we start is at the end. I ask my authors, what is the result you want to have from this book? Specifically, what do you want readers taking away? When they have finished the book, how does their mindset change? How does their outlook change? How does their attitude change? What about their behaviors? And this looks a little bit different, whether it's a faith-based book, let's say it's religion or spirituality, what type of new behaviors or even habit changes do they want them to experience? If it's business, marketing, for example, leadership, what new methods or processes do they need to be using? And of course, we also ask about what results do they want from the book? Do they want this to be a mass market sort of a book that has international distribution? Of course, they need to be using Kobo if they're going to go the digital route. And what does success look like for them? And we determine that overlap between what it is that you, the author, want to write about and what it is that your future readers actually want from books like yours. And the way we figure that out is we go to online verified reviews of books in their categories. So this is something that anyone listening, you can easily do this. You're working on a new book and you've got the table of contents, you're working on an outline, you're thinking, should I say this? Should I go deeper here? Should I cut this part out? I don't know. Here's how you can find a pretty solid answer. A little bit of customer research tip for you. Head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Goodreads, and look up the best-selling books in your category that you're going to be releasing your book in. Specifically, look at the neutral reviews. Like on Amazon, this would be the 4, 3, and 2-star reviews. There's been some research published in the New York Times that the average person tends not to trust a wall of 5-star reviews or kind of this page of 1-star reviews because it feels a little extreme. So let's kind of take a shortcut here. Look at the neutral reviews, the 4, 3, and 2-star reviews, and specifically look for 2 sentiments from reviewers, from your future readers. What is it that they bought the book hoping to get out of it that they didn't? This is often phrased like, hey, I bought this book because I heard about it from a friend, and I bought it hoping that I would learn A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and unfortunately, the author said this, but they didn't include this. And you'll see that sentiment repeated over and over and over again. Now, it may just so happen that whatever that this was that motivated people to buy the book, you are the expert in. So now you know from multiple people who've paid to learn what you could write about, yes, you probably should include that topic in your book. You'll also find things where a reviewer will say, you know, I bought this book hoping I would learn this, and yet the author talked about this topic again. I keep seeing this topic. I wish someone would please word it differently. And again, regardless of what your category is, this bit of feedback is going to be very helpful, because you'll be like, wow, I was thinking about writing a whole chapter, a whole section of my book on this specific topic, but people who are reviewing best-selling books out there are saying they're tired of hearing about it. Well, I don't want to be the person who shares what everyone's already read. I need to take a new look at this, a new angle. So maybe you want to delete that topic, remove that topic, or reframe, reposition that topic in a different way. So those two things, really getting clear on what it is all that you could write about, and then what is it that your future readers actually want to read, what they want to buy in future books in your category. That is the very first starting point for every author, you know, whether it's the self-help book or it's the next big entrepreneurial book. And you don't need to work with a ghostwriter to take advantage of those secrets.
That's great advice, especially for nonfiction. I'm curious also about, you say that when you're talking to, say, celebrity memoirs, and people are just dumping the receipts of their life on you and their snippets of parts of their life. How do you structure that into a narrative? How do you go from all of those little snippets?
I love that phrase, receipts of your life, because that's exactly
I love the comparison with taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So most of the time, if it's an autobiography or a memoir and the story is the central theme, we want to keep it in chronological order if at all possible. But oftentimes, that's not the ideal way to tell a person's story, because then it's an autobiography. And yes, if you're interested in the person's life, and that's all you're reading the book for, is to, you know, the same reason people would read Us or National Enquirer or People, as they kind of get fulfill the peeping Tom in all of us, you might say. That's how you're going to put it in there. Hey, chronological order, this happened, this happened, this happened. But that's not necessarily going to be what gives the most useful takeaways for readers. So what we'll do is we'll try to blend a couple of different book templates. Number one, yes, we'll try to tell stories in chronological order, but we won't include every single detail. What we'll do is we'll look at what are the themes of this person's life. If they're, let's say, a very famous self-help speaker, then what are the principles or the lessons, or is there a new framework that they're releasing out into the world that they have a masterclass or a course about that we can kind of mirror the structure of? And so in that chapter, we will tell a self-contained story or series of stories that would be in chronological order, but the entire book itself is not like chapter 1, the early years, chapter 2, my teenage years, young adulthood, chapter 3, early career, so on and so forth. Because unless the person is a president or an A-list celebrity, that's not really the most exciting book. And especially if it's a successful business person or someone whose life you want to emulate, having a mindset of teaching and imparting wisdom and advice, what worked for you, what were your biggest screw-ups in life, it's probably better to organize the book in that way, according to what principles does it make sense to teach, in what order, and then assign examples, scenes from life based on those. If it turns out it's not in chronological order, that's okay, as long as there's a coherent flow from one topic to the next.
That makes sense, yeah.
I'm just wondering, do you copyright fiction books, or is it mostly nonfiction?
I have actually worked with a few fiction authors in the past, and I'll say that the projects have all been the business fable category, kind of like Who Moved My Cheese, the Five Dysfunctions of a Team, The Go-Giver, those types of books. They tend to have a very kind of a cult following, you might say, people who love stories, but they would rather be entertained than just educated. So I guess you could say edutain. So I worked on a few of those books in the past.
Okay. So you mentioned that one of the reasons someone would hire you is so that you can basically organize their life story into a manageable parts and get the story out, actually. But are there other ways that you can help an author write a book?
Yes. Organizing and kind of putting all your mental library books and ideas in the right place in the right order does make sense. There's a couple of other reasons, and it's typically my more well-known clients who write a book. And the number one reason is they just don't have the time. Maybe they're a CEO of a large company, and 5 a.m., they're in the office getting ready for a board meeting. They're not in front of the computer for 3 hours or on their laptop, or even when they're on an international flight. Maybe they have a couple of hours to look over the next proposal for a client, and they're not like in that creative zone where they can think freely. They're kind of all over the place, as is the entrepreneurial way. So in that case, it's not necessarily just not having the time. They don't have that space as well. Time-space continuum is lacking in their lives for creativity, you might say. But what they get to do to enjoy that creative outlet and experience the pride of authorship, and this is especially true with my international clients, what we do is we hop on either Zoom for half an hour to an hour once a week, or use an app like WhatsApp, and we just chat back and forth. So I'll send over a couple of questions about a specific chapter that I'm working on, and when they get 5 minutes free at the airport in Dubai or London, and they're just sitting there in the lounge, they'll answer the question via voice, on WhatsApp. I'll take that material, transcribe it, and expand it, kind of massage it a little bit so it's fulfilling the purpose of the chapter, but it's still in their voice. And so that way, they can just say unfiltered what's on their mind, what they think about a topic, and not have to worry about chiseling away at the topic. Someone else can take care of them. So I think that time and space for creativity is one reason. The other reason, and this is for even business professionals, self-help authors, aspiring speakers, and business consultants, life coaches, health and wellness consultants, it has to do with the fact that they haven't done this before. You really can't do something professionally 40 times and not figure out how to do it pretty darn well.
Yeah.
So a lot of times my clients say, hey, I could write it myself. I enjoy copywriting blog posts and newsletters and emails for my tribe, my audience. But when I think about writing my book, I just freeze up and I filter myself. I don't say what I really want to say because I'm thinking someone's going to be reading this, someone's going to be reading this, someone's going to be reading this, and I just kind of freeze up. And by having that third-party professional, the ghostwriter, that you can just speak unfiltered, not hold back, just say exactly what you think, and incorporate what we do with a lot of entrepreneur clients is incorporate existing blog posts or articles or a masterclass they have, a coaching program, incorporate specific ideas and processes from that material, and then supplement it with these unfiltered conversations I have with the author. I call those unfiltered conversations uninterviews, because it's not like a journalist bouncing back and forth. It's really casual, fun conversation. The author could just go off any tangent, down any rabbit hole they want. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we are using our time productively and getting what we need out of the author's head into a recording and ultimately onto the page. And it's the best possible version of that idea.
I imagine you get very close to all your clients over the course of writing a book together.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is that how you develop that authentic voice, by spending a lot of time with clients?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways I can learn an author's voice. As far as I know, I'm one of the only ghostwriters in the world that uses writing analytics software to analyze an author's voice. So rather than just kind of getting kind of the touch and feel of an author, which is the art of ghostwriting, we actually consult stylometrics. So what are the specific tells of an author's communication style? What is their ratio of passive to active voice? Are there specific adverbs that come up over and over again? Are there turns of the phrase that they use? How is their punctuation? Do they use run-on sentences strategically, and it's just part of their style? Are they opposed to ever ending a sentence with a preposition? Those sorts of things we actually analyze to make sure that it's not just the feel of the author that I'm portraying on the page, but it is literally their voice. If you're analyzing it, it was 100% them. when it comes to the intimate relationship that I have with my authors, on more than one occasion, my authors have referred me to another aspiring author, and that aspiring author has said, "So, my friend tells me that you're their therapist."
Well, that's kind of how I would imagine it, that you would have to almost develop, because they're telling you their life story a lot of the time. And you're getting close and writing this book and communicating often. I can see how that would happen, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and I have to say, on, gosh, maybe a half dozen times, an author has told me, "So Joshua, what I'm going to share with you today, I have never told another human being in my life, not even my spouse knows this." And then they
put it in a
share
book.
their deep secret with me. And of course, you have to have that trust built in there. And of course, I never kiss and tell, or in this profession, I don't ghostwrite and tell. I take confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements very seriously.
Yeah, I imagine you'd be out of work pretty quickly if you
wrote
were
that book,
doing
I
that.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't even realize that there was programs that tell you how to speak and like write, which is so interesting.
So I'm curious about how that process works. When you look at the data that you analyze, when you gather that data, are you then writing using that knowledge? How does it work? How do you then translate that into your writing?
Yeah, so there's a two-step process as part of that. So actually, no, let's, if I'm speaking holistically, it's really three. So what I'm always starting with is something. I'm never writing from scratch and, BSing and making crap up on the spot, because that just doesn't fly. What I do first is I'm either working with the transcript of our conversations about simplicity's sake, chapter 1. So I'm working with, the author says, here's what I want to talk about in chapter 1. So I have transcripts of that. Maybe there is a topic that they spoke about for a TED Talk, or maybe they have a previous book that they were a New York Times bestseller, and they want to have a ghostwriter take care of it the second time because the first time took 5 years and the publisher wants a manuscript 6 months ago. But in any case, I'm starting with something. Now, what I do is I take the raw material, whether that's the combination, that's transcripts, that's courses, speeches, whatever, and I'm reorganizing it into the order that makes sense for maximum reader enjoyment. So that's why I have to know who their audience is. And it's so important to know what their future readers are already saying about books in their category. If authors listening, if there's only one thing you take away from this, let it be, please read the reviews of books in your category. These are the people who are going to buy your book. So specifically, those 4, 3, and 2-star reviews, what are they saying? What are they telling you they want from your book? So that's what I have in mind as I'm writing ghostwriting the first draft. And of course, I'm using all of their specific words that jump out as like, there's no way someone else would word it this way. Like having ghostwritten so many books, you get a feel just naturally, kind of the art of ghostwriting, that 1, 2, 3 author voices are different. So I'm making sure I'm, in the art of ghostwriting, maintaining the author's voice and using unique turns of the phrase or vocabulary or describing things the way that they do. So, for example, if you're, if someone has more of a visual style, they're always saying things like how things look, describing how things seem to them. They're very much focused on that. If they're authors who are more kinesthetic communicators, then they're talking about feeling, they're talking about space, they're talking about the tangible ideas, concrete examples. And that's how I'm able to, through the art of ghostwriting, recreate their voice. But what I've done for the actual stylometrics, the actual analytical side of this, is I use a few different tools to actually look at their voice in their recordings, in their previously written work, their speeches, blog posts, newsletters, emails, YouTube videos where they've been interviewed before. And I look at those places to see the consistent style over time that they've communicated again. And I then go back to the first draft of the chapter and apply what I know to be their authentic voice directly to the first draft of that chapter. Oftentimes, we've done such a good job on that first draft, maintaining their voice, that it's just kind of tweaks here and there, turning from this preposition to that preposition, removing a conjugation in a sentence and separating it a little bit. into two separate ideas. If they have a sort of staccato style, we're finding in interviews. We'll make sure that appears in one of the sentences, one of the paragraphs. So it is a multi-step process to produce a first draft. A lot goes into it. It's not, recording an author, editing the transcripts so it's typo-free, reordering it, and then sending it to the author. It's a bit more involved than that, you might say.
This is so interesting. Do you work on just one project at a time, or are you able to balance multiple and work with different authors and different voices?
Oh, we have several authors right now in about 6 different countries right now.
How many people are working on these? Does it tend to be one person doing the writing, or do you collaborate with a team?
Yes, I do have a team, but again, because I'm not just as the professional ghostwriter, but I'm the therapist, I'm the confidant, I'm the drinking buddy of my authors, literally in some cases, the drinking buddy of my authors. It is only I that interacts one-on-one with the author. We want to make sure that it maintains an intimate relationship. But I do have several people that work on various parts of projects, and we have a robust project management system that we use ClickUp to make sure every project is on schedule. There's a timeline for everything, checklists, deadlines for all of our clients, so every project moves forward on time. My wife, actually, she's part of the business. She helps with a lot of the operations and administrative tasks, keeping things going. We have a marketing consultant who assists us with campaigns. We have people who work on the reformatting of the books, cover design for the independent authors. So that way it's kind of a managed services approach. So you don't just work with me and the end result is, hey, you got a Word document, yippee! But then you have to figure everything out yourself. We oversee the process from that point onwards for independent authors, actually establishing their own imprint, going through the process of marketing the book, publishing the book, promoting the book through different channels internationally, using the resources of Kobo as one example, international distribution, and actually facilitate that entire process. So I've called it not just ghostwriting, but I call this process, this managed publishing service, I call it ghost publishing. Because just as in ghostwriting, someone else does all the work, you take all the credit. In ghost publishing, someone else does all the work of building an independent publishing business on your behalf, and you literally sit back and collect the royalties.
Wow, so your remit goes way beyond just the writing then. You're part of the whole marketing and distribution process?
Absolutely. We have different members on the team who are experts, actually leading experts on different aspects of this, whether it is getting podcast appearances, doing public relations on their behalf, marketing the book to their existing network, getting speaking engagements, even getting sponsorships for books. That's one of the best kept secrets of marketing a book, is getting a sponsorship. I'm sure a lot of the listeners, you've probably heard of the personal finance book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, by Robert Kiyosaki. That's a great example of how an unknown author from a small independent press became a household name. He wrote very positively in the book about Amway, a global network marketing, multi-level marketing company. He reached out to Amway, even as a little-known author, an independent author. He said, hey, I talk very nicely about Amway and your business model. What if you paid me to come give my presentation about personal finances and wealth management at local Amway conferences and workshops around the country? You give copies of my book to the members. What do you say? Amway said yes. They ordered roughly 25,000 copies of his book, I believe is the statistic. And he became a household name, at least in the United States, in personal finance. And that is something that authors can benefit from as well. So think about exactly who is it that your book is targeting that brands, businesses, corporations want to reach as well. Because there may, in fact, be a great collaborative opportunity for them to pay you, literally pay you, to sell books.
Interesting. I hadn't really considered that.
So just back to the marketing section a bit. You mentioned that you can help build a platform before a book is even available for pre-order, and just what are the ways that an author could do that?
Yes, and this is something that anyone can do. If you have access to Wi-Fi, you can do this. You don't even need to work with professionals to take care of this step if you've got the time and the grit to do so. So the best practice in public relations for authors is at least 3 months before your book is coming out, you want to start doing media interviews. Media interviews can be your friend has a YouTube channel. You've got a buddy who's just started a podcast. Any and all sorts of appearances where you talk about the book is really, really helpful. I have an independent author actually out of Canada up there where about 3 months before her book came out, we got her mainstream media as well as podcast appearances. So she did interviews about 3 months before the book came out. And this is where it gets really exciting about the platform and making sure that there's momentum when the book comes out. We asked all of the podcasters and the media personalities to please release the interview the week her book came out. And so they did. And the week that her book was released, she had 30 major interviews go live. She became a strong bestseller. And of course, that book is now creating leads 24/7 for her business. Now that it's a well-known bestseller. So that's a great idea that anyone can think about, is that your book is something to be marketed months before the book even comes out. But in the case of the podcast interviews and vlogs and blogs and anything else you're doing out there, make sure that you're promoting the book at least 3 months in advance. Even if you're asking people to say, hey, hold off on publishing the interview, please wait. But yeah, so that's a great thing you can do to start get that kind of a pre-platform built before the book even comes out.
It's a great idea.
What if you're not as well known, or you're not writing a self-help or business book and you're more delving into fiction and you're launching your first fiction book? How would you build that platform?
Yeah, so I actually had that exact task about a year ago. And with the fiction author, the novelist, it's surprisingly similar, because every fiction, it is every novel that I've worked on or come across or assisted an author in promoting, there are nonfiction tie-ins for the book. So, for example, one of the books I'm specifically thinking about is in the cyberpunk category, and there's some topics about some invasive technology that are part of the process, and of course, every day there's a new violation of privacy that is showing up from a big tech company in the news. Well, here we have an author who's writing a fascinating story about that technology gone wrong in the near future, and so that's a topic that the novelist can speak about, a modern story, and speak to how the headlines have motivated this author to pen this story. And so that's a great way that you can actually show up in the mainstream media and even independent podcasts and shows and blogs, is if your novel or even your life story has a tie-in to the headlines of today.
Yeah, that's a great connection there.
Mm-hmm.
We were discussing before coming on, were you aware of the controversy over the Copypaste Chris situation that went nuts on Twitter a little while back?
Copy paste, not from that exact name. It's possible I've heard of it. Can you enlighten me?
It was a big scandal in the romance world where an indie author was found to have plagiarized large chunks.
Oh, yes. I just didn't know that name. Yes, so
yeah.
Literally copying and pasting sections from best-selling, traditionally published authors, releasing those books, changing the names, changing the settings a little bit, and releasing them under a pseudonym. Yes, I did. Yeah. I did hear about that. Amazon had gotten in big trouble for allowing those to go on for so long.
Yeah.
Exactly. How does that kind of PR affect your business? Does it lead to any kind of distrust, or do you see any fallout from that kind of conversation, or is it just too separate from what you're doing?
A couple of authors have mentioned that story to me before, but it's always been in the context of, wow, sure glad I'm working with you and not one of these yahoos. So it's actually the case where, bad PR is actually good PR in this case, because I have an established brand as a professional ghostwriter, and so oftentimes when an aspiring author is talking to me, they've seen one of my publishing trainings, on my marketing trainings on YouTube, or they've seen me in an interview before, or they've been referred to me from an already published author. So there's that trust that's already there with authors. And so I find that they, in many cases, hold on to my publishing advice for dear life, because there's so many predators out there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct in thinking you don't get credited on any of the books that you work on? Is that right?
That's correct. I'm a professional ghostwriter, not a co-author or co-author for hire. A few times my authors have dropped a note in the acknowledgments about me, or in the gratitude section, the praise section, mention me, either my full name or just my first name. I'm fine with that, because going back to the earlier analogy about the accountant helping you sort through those receipts, hiring a professional ghostwriter is similar to hiring a professional accountant. In this case, we're both certified. We
You're
actually,
behind the scenes.
yes, we're working behind the scenes. And the job of the accountant is to get your money straight so you can be as profitable and effective in operations as possible. And I've never heard of an accountant who profit shares with their clients. That's not their job, because in that case they may recommend things that are not in the best interests of the author or the client. And it's the same way in my business. I'm the objective professional third party whose job is to organize all those mental receipts and make sense of them and produce a commercially viable, marketable, saleable, and yes, profitable manuscript. And so I really have to remain that objective third party beginning to end. Otherwise, I'll inject my ideas, say, nope, you should say it this way instead. But rather, I'm here to listen to the author say, here's what I want to say, can you help me?
And does that present a challenge when it comes to building a reputation and a past kind of history of doing this job? Or does it operate mainly on word of mouth and your PR appearances and TED Talks and that kind of thing, given that I assume that you can't publish a list of books that you've worked on?
I have not, and most ghostwriters are in that same situation. Mm-hmm. But in my case, I've had several clients who actually release me from the non-disclosure agreement, and I've gotten clients, authors, who've literally sent me a 2-minute, 5-minute, even 10-minute testimonial video saying, Joshua, please publish this on your YouTube channel, on your website. I love the process. I don't care who knows, because the way the confidentiality agreement works, if the relationship becomes public knowledge after the fact, well, then it's fair game at that point. And so I've had several independent authors over the years that have done that. We have entire case studies of how we wrote the best version, the most persuasive version of their manuscripts, released their books, helped them make money off of their books, not just from book sales, but from courses and coaching and master classes and speaking and whatnot, all after that. So it's not a case of me sitting down to an author and say, trust me, my entire body of work is private, but rather I say, hey, most of my work is private, as you can understand, but here are several independent authors and even traditionally published authors who have worked with me in the past. You can trust what their words are. And that's so I find a lot of my clients came to me because they were Googling my authors and they found out who worked on their book.
Oh, that's fantastic to have such great reviews.
Oh yes, it helps make the word of mouth really, really reach further.
I can imagine.
So you've essentially made this ghostwriting empire, I want to say. You have cover designer, marketer, your wife helps you with keeping everything on schedule. But I was just wondering, what is the best thing you think you've done for your business?
I think for the business, it was actually thinking of myself as more than just a freelance writer. Going back to the very early days of my business, I thought, okay, my job is to write content, submit content to client, repeat. But as I talked to more and more of my clients, they would say, okay, you got the book done, now what? And I was at a loss many years ago of what exactly to say. I was like, well, you could create space, read this book. And of course, nowadays, there are fantastic resources such as Kobo that really make the process of going from manuscript to making money as an author as easy as possible. But there are lots of different things an author has to consider in order to make writing a book a profitable venture. And so expanding and creating this entire managed service called ghost publishing for authors, I think that great transition to, from I'm going to write you a Word document, pay me for the Word document, going from that to when you work with Joshua Lisec, you are literally buying an independent publishing business that is up and running and it fulfills orders and with the promotion engine involved. So I think that was the great leap, especially of expanding my value in clients' eyes, because at this point it's like, well, of course, why wouldn't I work with you? You've thought of everything. You've thought of things I haven't even thought of. A lot of authors say.
It sounds like you're essentially running an imprint
for each person, yeah.
Or yeah, I suppose so. Is that how it works? Have you essentially have you got a small publishing arm for each person?
That is
that you're
absolutely
working
correct.
with?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But it's not my imprint, because
Mhm.
again, that's why I'm kind of borrowing the definition of ghost writing and calling it ghost
Mhm.
publishing, is because it's not my imprint that's getting the credit, getting the royalties. The authors keep all the royalties, just as ghost writing authors keep all the credit. But it's establishing, marketing, and managing their imprints on their behalf for them.
And how much have you seen the industry change since digital publishing came into play, and over the last, 10 years or so,
Yeah.
things have changed a lot. Has that affected your business?
Only in as much as there are now other options to sell,
Mhm.
to sell readers. Just about every client I've ever worked with has said we want to have a print edition as well. Like, they'll say, when I'm up there giving my speech and I come down, I want to be able to sign something. Can't really sign a Kindle. So I see the strong track record of print sales. I mean, it's gone up and down over the years. We saw ebooks come on the scene with the Kindle. It spiked, took a larger market share. Everyone was saying, "Is this the end of the paperback book?" And then, of course, they've kind of come down a little bit. But what I'm seeing now is the rise of the audiobook, especially in your aspirational book categories, thinking self-help, business, entrepreneurship, any type of a how-to topic, even health and wellness, because what are people doing nowadays? They're commuting to and from work, they're at the gym, they're doing housework, they're out in the garden, they're playing golf. And because there's such pressure on our schedules nowadays, it's easy to incorporate reading, in this case listening, to part of your schedule. So we also produce audiobooks on behalf for our clients as part of the Ghost publishing process, because I believe the statistic is upwards of 20% of all book sales now are the audio edition. Go over to Amazon and just pick marketing or entrepreneurship, and you'll see half of the best sellers at the very top are the audio edition of the book. So we want to make sure that our authors can take advantage of that trend as in audio, because people just don't have as much time nowadays for the digital or print editions.
Do you coach the authors on speaking for their own audiobook, narrating it themselves?
Yes. Although several authors that have gone through this process before, they are public speakers and even been paid professionally. So it's more so boosting their confidence, as more so than managing managing inflection and recommending they say it this way or that way. But it's more so just saying, hey, it's okay if you say It's okay if you repeat it says. We'll take care of that in post.
Fascinating. It sounds like you've got every aspect of the
Yeah.
industry covered. This has been so interesting.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Without resources and platforms like Kobo, ghost publishing would not be a thing. So it's really packaging up some of the amazing resources, like corporate sponsorship, like marketing, like the PR firms that we brought in to work with our authors, and of course the resources that Kobo has for international ebook distribution that have really facilitated this process. So yes, authors can work directly with you all, but if they want like the complete managed service, then ultimately they'll get to work with Kobo, but perhaps through their own imprint somewhat differently.
Mm-hmm.
And then if someone was interested in finding more of your tips that you have, or maybe getting one of your services for a book that they're writing, how could they go about doing that?
Sure, a couple of different ways. They can find entrepreneurswordsmith.com. That's the website for my business, the Entrepreneurs Wordsmith. Entrepreneurs is plural, and then wordsmith.com. And then we have roughly 75 book writing, marketing, and publishing trainings on the YouTube channel. All you have to do is just go over to YouTube and search Joshua Lisec, and our channel will come up.
Awesome.
Perfect. We'll include those links when we write this up.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
We sure have. I feel like this has been quite an adventure through the process of going from a book idea to publication and to launch, and how to do so profitably, whether or not you'd like professional support. And again, I think that the real number one tip that I'd like to impart to everyone who's made it to the end of the interview here is, as soon as you're done listening, go over to Amazon, to Goodreads, to Barnes & Noble, and look up those neutral mixed reviews for books in the future categories you're going to be writing in. And that will save you so much time and possibly make you so much money when you release your book.
It's a great tip.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. I learned a lot.
Absolutely, Joni and Stephanie. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, please reach out to us at writinglife@kobo.com. And if you're looking for tips on how to grow your publishing business, visit kobowritinglife.com.
And please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe because it helps other listeners find us as well. This episode was produced by Stephanie McGrath and Joni DePlacido, and music was provided by Tearjerker. Special thanks to Joshua for being a guest on our podcast.
If you're ready to start your self-publishing journey today, sign up for free at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.